So this is going to be another live reaction today from me because, well, I enjoy these. So we're going to go over the mechanics of the new Magic the Gathering Edge of Eternities um, card set, and this is going to be largely uh, kind of a critique, kind of a pro and con kind of thing with these new mechanics. So first, I'm not going to read Matt's editorialization of this bullshit. It's just, I don't care what he thinks about it. We're just going to go over what the mechanics are and how they function. Spacecraft and station, which apparently this is a new, this is basically Vehicles 2.0. For those of you who know, you, whenever you play a vehicle, it's not a creature until it becomes crude, until end of turn. Um, Spacecraft is somewhat similar in that um, it so station is you tap another creature you control, put charge counters equal to its power on the spacecraft. Station only as a sorcery. This spacecraft becomes a creature after it gets 4+ charge counters. So you get a creature forever after you tap for the crew cost, basically. That's the mechanic. Is with spacecraft, crew is a forever effect, not just until turn. Now you still get counters, so to speak, and I'm sure there are. Ooh, that would be interesting if there was actually an ability to remove charge counters from vehicles to spacecraft to turn them just back into basic artifacts. That would be interesting. And um that's with the new spacecraft, again, vehicles 2.0 kind of deal. It's meh, and it does combo with some of the other mechanics they brought out. Second is planet. Now they are a new basic non-basic land type, but from what I understand, planet itself doesn't have any rules attached to it, but nearly every planet slash land that they have in this set has a station ability. So you put down these lands and you can tap your creatures to build them up so that uh, they become stationed. They become no longer just a land, so you can unlock the second ability. Whew. Now down here, this land enters tapped. You can tap it for a blue, or when it's stationed for 12 plus, you can pay a blue and add a blue for each artifact you control. That's that makes sense. Ulthros Titanic God Hole. Now, Warp is an ability that I actually did enjoy, and I'm now I have mixed feelings. At first, I really liked the introduction of Warp because it was in the context of the Eldrazi. And the Eldrazi, as you know, are kind of the Lovecraftian monsters of Magic the Gathering. They're very Lovecraftian, very ethereal, yet horrifying at the same time. And so I'll be honest, when I saw the warp ability on the Eldrazi, I was impressed because in terms of power level, this is kind of like the same mechanical story of an Eldrazi. It's kind of here, kind of not, half in, half out, reality warping Lovecraftian entity. Cool. Understand that. There's gonna be some reality flicker around these monsters when they're not, fully emerged or submerged into the material realm. What is disappointing, however, is when I look at these abilities being used on white cards and angels. And this is, instead of it being like Eldrazi centric, it's far more well, commonplace. Angels can now flicker in and out of space. So basically what warp does is you have this big beefy creature for 5 mana. But it says that when it enters, you can search your library for a basic planes or creature card with mana cost 1 or less, reveal it, put it in your hand and shuffle. You have to pay 5 to summon this creature, or you can use its warp cost. And warp is just basically an extended evoke. So evoke, you would summon the creature, then destroy it, or then immediately sacrifice it. So the enter ability um, doubles up. I'm sorry, I am sleepy. I've been working nights constantly this whole week and I'm not used to it, so I am out of sync. So if I'm yawning at one, that is why that's happening. So for Warp 2, one white and one other, you may cast this card from your hand for its warp cost. Exile this creature at the beginning of the next end step. You may then cast it from exile on a later turn. So whenever you warp something, it's exiled, you always have it to cast later on. You did not get that with Evo. So warp is almost a guarantee that this thing will be from. So, and mm, that's an interesting trade-off. Again, it made sense with those. Um, but Angels, I'm not on board with it. I don't know if it'll go for other colors as well. But right now, I've only seen on white and black, so we will see. Now, Void is where things get really interesting. Um, Void is basically an additional effect, like for example, Threshold used to be an additional effect if you had 7 or more cards in your graveyard. This is a similar ability where the effect is amplified. For example, this is Tragic Trajectory. For 1 black, target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. That effect, because of Void, becomes amplified um, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield or a spell was warped this turn. So you can combo Warp and Void to magnify to get the Void effect if you warped on that turn. And Void would, of course, turn the spell into, instead of -2/-2, it would become -10/10. This, and of course, this is called the Tragic Trajectory, and it has this Void cost because the idea is, okay, I can Tragic Trajectory an individual, or I can swallow an entire starship. That's the point of this card. Look, good flavor for this. I am a fan. The combo between between Warp and Void is very well thought out. I actually approve. I do like it. I can't. I find no. This is very thematic, very clean. Combos very nicely, and it's not too. It's not too esoteric to the point where it's no longer telling a story. To me, that is the most important part, is whether or not tells a cohesive story, which this does. Very well done. Moving on, we have another insatiable Skittermaw, which has void at the beginning of your end step. If a non-land permanent was with the battlefield this turn or spell with warp, putting 1/1 counter on this creature. I like. So Skittermaw gets stronger every time you warp a spell. So this is very. I like what they've done. Now, lander tokens. This is interesting, and I'm laughing because there is so much that they're doing with the Edge of Eternity set. First when I heard that they were bringing back slivers to this set, I'm like, oh, you're ripping off Tyranids from 40K, which is a ripoff from Ender's Game, which is a ripoff from Starship Troopers, which is a ripoff from Alien, all the things. Um, I just wasn't impressed. But it turns out they're selling a lot more. Like a lander is basically a drop pod from Warhammer, if you understand. So Galactic Wayfarer, when this creature enters, create a lander token. It's an artifact that says pay to, sacrifice this token, search your library for a basic land, and put it into the battlefield tapped. So I'm very so basically what this is a oh my gosh, it's a seed mechanic. People are going to the idea is people are going to planets and calling for basically reinforcements, terramorphing that whole idea, and the act of terramorphing gives you an extra land, an extra tapped land that turn. Very interesting concept. I I don't mind it, but it's just very interesting. I am not I'm not against it, but it is. If you combined Lander with Landfall, you could cause a whole bunch of shenanigans. Um, for those of us legacy players who would wreak havoc with this. So that's my reaction to this. It went a little longer than I wanted to, but basically, Wizards of the Coast is doing all of the sci-fi shit, except I thought they were stealing just Tyranids, but it turns out they're also stealing Chronicles of Riddick. If you look really closely at some of the Void cards, if you look at the black set, it's clearly um, the the Necro race from Chronicles of Riddick and the Slivers and the Kabu monsters being the insectoid um creatures that he fought during Pitch Black. Yeah, they're stealing from Chronicles of Riddick and a few other the high spacefaring adventures. So it's obvious what they're doing. They're just recycling old IPs. But the most egregious I can see is Chronicles of Riddick, which is interesting that they would do that but not give it credit. Rest in peace, Chronicles of Riddick. Like that's a good franchise. It really was. But that's my take on this. Anyways, go throw some shade, everybody. Bye.